mpaka Ijumaa, moja kwa moja kutoka VOA Swahili.
I'm Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent McCory. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. Israel continues its aerial assault of Gaza as concerns of a wider war in the Middle East grow and 2 hostages are released. A South African biomedical engineer clinches the 2023 Royal Academy of Engineering Africa Prize for his invention. And in our health report, October 24th is World Polio Day, a day to focus on polio and step up efforts towards its eradication. All that and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. Israel's aerial bombardment of Gaza is turning much of the territory into rubble ahead of a likely ground offensive against Hamas militants. The death toll in Gaza is rising, and according to the Hamas-run health ministry, Israeli airstrikes have killed over 700 people in the past day. Amid U.S. fears the fighting could spark a wider conflict in the region, Gaza's 2.3 million people are running out of food, water and medicine. More than 1,400 people in Israel have been killed, mostly civilians who died in the initial Hamas rampage. In addition, 222 people are believed to have been captured by Hamas, but 4 have now been released. The Israeli military released video Tuesday of what it says are airstrikes in Gaza meant to dismantle the militant group. In a statement accompanying the video, the Israel Defense Forces says it struck dozens of Hamas gunmen preparing to fire rockets, while its warplane struck dozens of buildings and Hamas staging grounds. Israel Defense Forces added that several Hamas commanders had also been killed. The World Health Organization says 12 hospitals out of a total of 35 in Gaza are not operating, and it says 46 of 72 healthcare facilities across Gaza are not functioning, mostly in Gaza City and northern Gaza. An 85-year-old woman, one of the 2 women released by Hamas Tuesday, told reporters that the Hamas militants beat her with sticks, bruising her ribs and making it hard to breathe as they kidnapped her during their attack on towns in southern Israel on October the 7th. Yocheved Elechvitz, seen on the left, is one of the only 4 hostages to be released and the first to speak publicly. She says the people assigned to guard her said they are people who believed in the Quran and would not hurt them. Lifshitz, whose husband remains a hostage, says they were later held in a room and treated well, eating 1 meal a day and receiving medical care. Meir Shitrit, an Israeli politician and a member of Israel's Knesset, says the only way forward for his country is to diminish the militant group Hamas' power for lasting peace in the region. Israel's former finance minister Shitrit, however, emphasized that the country doesn't have intention for the conflict to spread beyond the intended target against Hamas. Shitrit spoke to VOA, and here is an excerpt from that conversation.
If we diminish the Hamas, we have no problem with the people living in Gaza. Remember that 20,000 of them were working in Israel every day. Mm-hmm. We're coming to Israel, and we increase the people of coming to work to Israel more and more, as much as they want. As far as they're not bringing any weapon or anything in. What happened at the Hamas, in matter of fact, was in matter of fact traitor. He worked against his own people by attacking Israel. Now they can't work in Israel, of course. I hope if we diminish the Hamas, we can change everything upside down. We can bring the people of Hamas, of the people in Gaza, which I have nothing against them, could live back in Gaza, living in peace with Israel under Palestinian Authority. That will be totally a different world. I hope we will be there. So we don't want to have any war with anybody else, not with the Hezbollah, not with Iran, not with anyone. Our target is very clear. We want to diminish the Hamas out out of the world, not out of Gaza, out of the world. He's holding the people in Gaza by force, and not let them. Anybody who tried to object to the Hamas is killed by the Hamas, including these Palestinians. Doesn't matter who is he. They're holding the people by power over there, and we want to diminish these people. We don't have any desire to go to any conflict or war, nor with Iran, nor with Hezbollah, unless they're attacking us. If they're attacking us, we'll have to react. And I'm glad that the United States demonstrate their own support by bringing in the carrier. Two carriers to our area. I hope we don't have to do anything about it.
Well, that was VOA speaking to Mia Shitrit. Now, for more on what's happening in the conflict, let's go to VOA correspondent Jan Butcher, who's standing by in the West Bank. Tell us, Jan, what you're seeing and hearing at your location today.
Vincent, I've been talking to people on both sides of this conflict in the last days. And what I hear from them is that a lot of people, most of them, are very worried about the future. What's going to happen here? Is Israel about to enter Gaza? Or are they going to invade? And what will be the reaction in Lebanon with the Hezbollah? What will be the reaction in the West Bank? There are a lot of questions, but few answers so far.
Now, we know that both sides, their people are concerned about Israel entering Gaza. What are their worst fears? What are their main concerns?
I think people on both sides, they're really worried that this war could escalate for a regional conflict. The West Bank becoming a place for an open war like in Gaza, or a big war against Hezbollah and Lebanon, and what will be the reaction of other countries in the region. I think people are really worried about an escalation of this war in a regional conflict.
Do you hear at all, any side, anybody talking about, hey, let's sit down and find a better way to resolve this?
No, I couldn't hear anyone talking about this. What I hear from the Israelis is that Hamas has to be destroyed. There's no other solution than violence. And what I'm hearing in the West Bank, it's people saying there's no room for negotiation anymore. We have to react. We have to have a different approach towards Israel. This is a very big critique to the Palestinian Authority that has been trying to find a solution without violence for the last 30 years. But for them, nothing's changing.
Quite a tough situation at the moment, Jan. Thank you very much. Jan Butcher reporting live from the West Bank. Thank you there. Now, concerns of a wider war in the Middle East are growing as the United States is dispatching more military assets and warning of significant threats to Americans and U.S. facilities in the region. VOA senior diplomatic correspondent Cindy Sain reports from the State Department.
Israel's military has increased its airstrikes on Gaza, destroying entire neighborhoods, amid expectations of an Israeli ground offensive. Amid fears of a wider war erupting, White House National Security Council Coordinator John Kirby said attacks on U.S. interests in the region have increased.
We know Iran continues to support Hamas and Hezbollah. And we know that Iran is closely monitoring these events and in some cases actively facilitating these attacks and spurring on others who may want to exploit the conflict for their own good or for that of Iran. We know Iran's goal is to maintain some level of deniability here, but we're not going to allow them to do that. We also are not going to allow any threat to our interest in the region to go unchallenged.
On Sunday, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin spoke to ABC This Week, saying the United States is boosting its military presence in the Middle East.
Well, Jonathan, as you know, recently we've seen rocket and UAV attacks against bases housing our troops in Iraq and Syria. We're concerned about potential escalation. In fact, what we're seeing is the prospect of a significant escalation of attacks on our troops and our people throughout the region. And because of that, we're going to do what's necessary to make sure that our troops are in the good position. They're protected.
Since the October 7th attack on southern Israel by the Palestinian militant group Hamas, killing more than 1,400 Israelis, Israel's strikes on Gaza have killed at least 5,000 Palestinians. The United Nations and humanitarian groups are calling for a humanitarian pause in the fighting. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller had this to say on Monday.
Any ceasefire would give Hamas the ability to rest, to refit, and to get ready to continue launching terrorist attacks against Israel.
European Union Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said Monday he believed the group's leaders would back a call for a humanitarian pause to allow aid to enter Gaza. Humanitarian aid continued to trickle into the Gaza Strip as 20 more aid trucks entered. But a lack of fuel for deliveries is threatening to halt the operation, with more than 2 million besieged Palestinians awaiting help. Cindy Sain, VOA News, the State Department.
The U.S. is issuing a new warning to ships traveling through the Red Sea, urging caution when transiting this region. This comes after a drone and missile attack launched from Yemen. The U.S. Navy says it shot down missiles and drones believed to have been launched by Yemen's Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in recent days. For more on U.S. assets in the region, let's go to the Pentagon, where correspondent Carla Babb is standing by. Carla, tell us what you know about the U.S. moving forces into the Middle East.
Well, that's right, Vincent. As you mentioned, with Secretary Lloyd Austin saying that he wanted to protect his forces, that's exactly what the U.S. military is doing. They sent out additional prepare to deploy orders for more U.S. troops. I've been told that number is still fluctuating while they're figuring out exactly who is going to prepare to deploy, but that number is fewer than 500, officials tell me. And that is in addition to a THAAD battery coming into the region and multiple Patriot batteries coming into the region for air defense. Why is there so much air defense coming in? Because we have seen attack after attack on U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria, at least 5 in recent days, one of them occurring yesterday in Syria at Al-Tanf garrison. That's in southern Syria. There were drones launched, no injuries and no casualties in that attack. But there was an attack on Al-Tanf last week, and there were minor injuries during that attack.
So one may want to find out if officials have said what would be the reaction, say, if there's an attack next time around.
Well, the Pentagon has said that they will reserve the right to defend their forces and to strike back at a time and a place of their choosing. But we're hearing concern after concern here in this building of a significant escalation to the fight that started October 7th when Hamas attacked Israel. But as things continue to spread and spread, the U.S. is coming into the region saying, do not make this a bigger regional attack. Iran, do not escalate this further, Hezbollah or the Houthis in Yemen. But as you see with some attacks, there have been some attacks from Hezbollah into Israel. There were the missiles fired from the Houthi rebels in Yemen that were struck down by the USS Carney. 4 of those missiles, I've been told, and multiple drones on top of that. There is this significant threat going on, and the U.S. wants to be prepared to defend its allies and partners in the region and to defend its forces if necessary.
Well, Carla, thank you very much. Viewers, Carla Babb reporting live from the Pentagon. Is peace a viable option in the Israeli-Hamas war? Now, viewers, Anthony Lebruto spoke to faith leaders and scholars in Washington about whether peace is possible and what it would look like in a region where the conflicts date back centuries.
As the war between Israel and Hamas intensifies, the prospects for a truce or even lasting peace seem increasingly remote. But some religious leaders believe peace is possible. But what would that look like? Rabbi David Vokenfeld of the Ohev Shalom Synagogue in Washington, D.C., sees peace as a necessary tool towards constructive dialogue between the two sides.
Many years ago, Israeli Prime Minister Shimon Peres said that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but there's no tunnel. So I think it's not hard to imagine what peace could look like. I think there's, many possible visions of what a solution could look like, where Israelis and Palestinians are living side by side in peace and security and freedom and dignity.
The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has dragged on over multiple generations, complicating efforts to find a lasting solution that would be acceptable to both Israelis and Palestinians.
But it's what the hard part is seeing how to get from here to there, because there's so much lacks so little trust and so much violence and so much hatred, and it's very hard to see how we get from here to there. But their children and their grandchildren will only be able to live lives of peace and freedom and security and dignity if the children and grandchildren of the people they're fighting in the Hamas militant groups also live lives of peace and freedom and dignity and security. And so like the fate of these two peoples are really linked, because we share a homeland.
Jenab Tutunji, a former George Washington University professor and academic at the Palestine Center in Washington, D.C., agrees, but says that any peace involving Hamas would be difficult to implement.
Besides, getting rid of Hamas is an open question, because you can kill the existing leadership, but the effect of the destruction and the warfare and the conflict is that new people will join Hamas. So you want to find a way to reconcile the opposition.
Tutunji says Palestinians do not see Hamas as a permanent political fixture, but rather as a product of a complicated and often violent history in the region.
But the methods it's using were methods that were tried a long time ago, and they didn't produce any results. I think Hamas totally misunderstands the Israeli psychology. And they think violence will force Israel to make accommodations, and violence is only making Israel more violent and more resistant to a solution. So Hamas is not the ideal spokesman or actor for the Palestinians.
As Israel amasses troops ahead of a likely ground invasion of Gaza, diplomatic pressure will likely continue, in the hopes that peace will come sooner rather than later. Anthony Labruto, VOA News, Washington.
Well, at least 20 civilians have been killed in an Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo attack blamed on militants linked to the Islamic State group. That's according to local sources. The assault occurred Monday night in North Kivu province. The Islamic State-affiliated Allied Democratic Forces are accused of slaughtering thousands of civilians in the conflict-torn Eastern DRC. 12 victims were minors and 14 were adults, most of them killed with knives. Now, still to come, it's World Polio Day. We'll have the details after a short break.
This week on Straight Talk Africa, the war between Israel and Hamas is intensifying and the death toll in Gaza is rising. The international community is trying to find a way to avoid the armed conflict from spreading across the Middle East and at the same time avert a wider humanitarian catastrophe among Palestinians. Join me, Heidi Adams, and my guests for an in-depth discussion on the Israel-Hamas war on the next Straight Talk Africa.
In other news, the United States is ending assistance to Gabon over its August 30th coup, but says it is ready to provide aid in return for concrete progress towards democracy, according to a State Department spokesman. The U.S., which had already paused assistance after the military takeover, says it has formally determined that a coup took place, which under U.S. law requires an end to non-humanitarian aid. Kenyan court has extended an order barring the government from deploying hundreds of police officers to Haiti on a United Nations-backed mission. The ruling came one day after the UN warned that security in Haiti, where violent gangs control large parts of the country, has collapsed. And Nigeria's two main opposition leaders are asking the nation's Supreme Court to cancel last month's tribunal ruling upholding President Bola Tinubu's February election victory in a last bid to reverse results of a vote widely accepted by the international community. A South African biomedical engineer has been awarded the 2023 Royal Academy of Engineering Africa Prize for his invention, the Flexigene. This handheld device helps gynecologists diagnose and treat uterine problems without the need for anesthesia or expensive equipment. Zahir Kasim reports from Cape Town.
Biomedical engineer Edmund Wessels demonstrates his invention, the Flexigene. It allows gynecologists to examine the inside of the cervix to diagnose and treat uterine-related problems much more easily.
The broader problem is that the equipment that they've been essentially forced to use, the current standards, cause a lot of pain and discomfort to women undergoing this procedure, resulting in that need for the operating room with anesthesia. And although it's possible to do these procedures outside the operating room, women are still subjected to unnecessary pain.
The device is battery-powered, portable, and relatively inexpensive. It can also be made available at smaller clinics, making it much easier for women who live in remote areas to get the care they need closer to home. The Royal Academy's Africa Prize for Engineering Innovation jointly recognized Wessels and Ugandan software engineer Anatoly Kirigwajo, who created technology that alerts both police and communities to emergencies. The Academy said the costs of Wessels' invention could have a significant impact around the world.
The key thing with this innovation is the affordability. It's making something that is usually something that people have to travel for, or it's unaffordable. It's kind of making it more accessible to people, as I said, in remote areas. And not just in South Africa, where Edmund's based, but across the continent.
Wessels co-founded VAS Medtech with Christopher Kent Mania.
So what we're really looking at here is redesigning the way we deliver women's healthcare and changing the systems fundamentally, elevating the skill set of primary healthcare workers like general practitioners and nurses, getting them to do diagnoses, and passing that information, that critical data, off to gynecologists to really prioritize their workflow so that they're actually performing surgeries, right?
The Flexigene team is currently developing an updated version of the product that they predict will be available in about 2 years. Zahir Kasim for VOA News, Cape Town.
Well, it's time now for a health segment, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with the latest on polio. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Vincent. Hello, everyone. October 24th is World Polio Day. The day aims to bring attention to polio and step up efforts toward polio eradication. Polio is a highly infectious viral disease that largely affects children under age 5. The virus is mainly spread from person to person, typically through contaminated water. It can attack the nervous system and, in some cases, lead to paralysis. According to the World Health Organization, wild poliovirus cases have decreased by over 99% since 1988. As of 2022, the wild poliovirus remains endemic in Pakistan and Afghanistan. For more insight, I speak to Dr. Tunji Funsho. He's a Rorary's Nigeria National Polio Plus Chair. Dr. Funsho joins us via Skype from Lagos. Dr. Funsho, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So as I mentioned earlier, polio cases have decreased by over 99% since 1988. To what extent is polio still a public health threat? What do you make of the number?
Well, polio will remain a public health threat as long as there's just even one case of polio anywhere in the world. And until polio is eradicated from these two countries that you mentioned, Pakistan and Afghanistan, every part of the world is at risk. because the polio virus is only a plane ride away. So we must continue the same efforts that has brought us from the number of cases you mentioned earlier, approximately 1,000 cases of the wild polio virus every year in 125 countries, to where we have currently, as of this point this year, just 9 cases. But even one case of polio is a case too many.
One case is a case too many. Dr. Funsho, let me ask you this. In August 2020, Nigeria was certified free of polio. Since then, what has been done to ensure that the country remains polio-free and the region as well?
Well, we have continued as Rotarians in particular and Global Polio Eradication Initiative partners continue to advocate with governments not to take, their eyes off the ball. Polio eradication is a very expensive venture. We still expect that we will expend about $4.8 billion US before the expected date of certification of 2016. So we need funds and we need governments to continue their commitment, both financially and also in terms of giving the political will and the political leadership to ensure that all segments of the society all over Africa, particularly in Nigeria, that is one of the countries that, has had quite a sizable number, of the polio variant that has been ravaging the northwestern part of the country.
When you look at the African continent and where things are regarding the fight against polio, according to you, what is the next frontier in the fight against polio on the continent?
Well, the next frontier, as I mentioned, is, countries and regions of those countries we call consequential geographies. Currently, we have southern DRC, northwestern Nigeria, parts of Yemen, and another, fourth country. These are areas where the GPR, which is the Global Polio Eradication Initiative partners, are concentrating their efforts to ensure that zero-dose children, because children who have never had even a single drop of the polio virus still abound. We have almost 20%, of them that we need to reach. We need to reach them wherever they may be. Currently, there are challenges of reaching these children either because they live in very remote areas or they live in conflict-ridden areas.
Okay.
So the GPR is evolving new strategies to ensure we can get the polio vaccine to these children.
Okay, Dr. Funsho, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us today. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on X at Linor Mudu. Vincent?
Well, thanks a lot, Lenore. Be sure to watch Lenore Mudu's health report every Tuesday right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.